The reason why people don't like calling these characters supports is mainly because of some teams like this, where it's just they're doing the entire damage, so like they're not supporting anything, right? So it's very easy to just, look at this and be like, well, they're not basing themselves off of a DPS. They are basing themselves off of themselves, right? So, they don't need a DPS's, damage to, their base damage to be good, right? They can do whatever they want and they'll still be doing the same amount of damage. However, to me, they accomplish the same goal by increasing the team's damage, and you don't use them on field, which is why I consider these, supports. They are a very overlapping sort of deal, I would say, honestly. And, Mavwika here can be considered a DPS if you want to, say that, oh, she's doing so much damage on field, technically, with her burst, that she's technically the DPS of the team. However, there's also other ways people try and, say main DPS, right? Some people consider main DPS only DPS characters, or only characters that are doing the most damage on the team. But I get why people don't consider, like, Kokomi a main DPS of, the team, right? Personally, I would say Kokomi is not necessarily a main DPS, but she's definitely not. I wouldn't call anybody else the main DPS on the team, right? I don't think the team that I'm using on the other half has a main DPS, honestly. I really do not. I genuinely think that it's overall, I feel like it's just a team of support characters, and the support characters are using their own unique abilities to sort of buff each other, right? Mavwika is using, 40% damage bonus on everyone to buff herself, right? Fiorina, application through her off-field damage, right? That's something, right? Also, I love being told that my Fiorina has too much energy recharge. I'm just gonna mention it every single time. Like, I love being told that my Fiorina has too much energy recharge. Now, this team, it is very E-skill heavy, basically, is the main quirk of this team, I would say. Right, so yeah, we're seeing all the damage. Yep. You're seeing 10,000 damage, overload 11,000 right there. Yeah, I mean, it works, So yeah, I really think that it's overall just a lot of supports, with their support abilities sort of intertwining. I don't think I could call anyone here a main DPS purely because, oh, this character does the most damage. Like, Mavwika, to me, is not fulfilling a main DPS role on this team where she is being used on field, even though we definitely could use her for that, right? But we're not, just because we want to have her do her off-field damage, because she's supporting in a way of just doing her off-field damage. And to me, that is basically the same as, regular supports that, give you damage bonus and stuff. So I consider sub DPS characters support characters, and I generally don't use the term sub DPS basically at all. And the only reason I use it is when I, see other people using it. I'm like, all right, we'll just talk like this for a bit. But to me, when I say Mavwika is a support character, some people take that as, oh, 40% damage bonus, and they're considering her off-field damage as a sub DPS role where she's not being a support character, right? That is something that people, it's hard to be like, when people say Mavwika is a terrible support, it's like, well, what do you mean? Like exactly how do you see this? Because, Mavwika going ahead and she's, can go ahead and we'll just do this, and she can, do this giant nuke. I consider this support. I consider that 300,000 damage giant nuke support, because Mavwika here, did I not do my E-skill? Oh, right, I ran out of my Night Soul intentionally so I could get big damage. All right, yeah. All right, well, to me, Mavwika's off-field damage, you see 25,000 there, 67,000 there. Like, she's doing good, and she is very much so, supporting, I feel like, in this role. And it's especially weird, the term sub DPS to me, because, like, some characters weirdly get relegated to the category, and some people, well, I shouldn't say, like, characters get relegated. No, when people talk about it, sometimes they're like, oh, this character is sub DPS, but this character is not, when those characters are nearly functionally the same. It's almost like there's a threshold, maybe, or possibly, because people don't consider Nahida sub DPS, which I agree with, but Nahida can do decent off-field damage. Like, it's not great, but it's off-field damage that she can do, and it's something that, people are just like, whatever, she's not a sub DPS. Like, she doesn't fit that role. Like, is it because her support abilities are just so strong? To me, I just would say her off-field damage is a support ability. To me, that is how it sort of works. I don't consider Emily a sub DPS. I think her giant burst nuke is a nice support ability to, destroy some enemies, and then your real DPS comes in and he has to do less work, right? I think overall supports and sub DPS, no matter what, they have the same goal, and I think that's what matters most to me when I'm classifying characters, right? I wouldn't consider Risley a sub DPS, assuming that you wouldn't, like, I mean, a terrible playstyle, but you'd basically, for him to be a sub DPS, you'd have to just have him in the team and only use him for his burst. If you did that, then, that may trigger some people saying sub DPS, or not, because some people consider this giant burst damage, right, that Mavuika does, not sub DPS. They just consider it. They also, a lot of people like to say off-field damage, right? Like, when comparing Mavuika and Fiorina, they're like off-field damage, and it's like, I know you're excluding Mavuika's burst because you know how strong it hits, all right? I know. People intentionally like, Fiorina does more damage with her off-field damage. It's like, oh, but Mavuika's doing like 700,000 on this team. Like that does happen. Overall, sub DPS support, to me, they're the same thing, but some people try and, divide them into two separate things. If you do it, I don't really care, but to me, I'm just going to call Mavuika a support with her, 700,000 burst damage. I'm not going to consider it, oh, she's doing most of the damage on the team. I'm going to be like, well, she's doing, damage on the team. That's adding to the team's damage. Therefore, a Risley team that does 3 million, I'm not going to look at it and be like, well, Mavuika did most of the damage. It's really a Mavuika team. No, if I'm using Risley on field, it's going to be a Risley team. Although I don't think in my teams, Risley is doing lower damage. But let's say Ayaka, right? Ayaka, if I were to add Mavuika to her team, she would be doing more damage. And would I consider it a Mavuika team? No, because I'm still playing Ayaka as the main DPS role. And, this character is supporting Ayaka by adding to the damage. Because, I mean, you could even do it to where Ayaka is allowing, Mavuika to melt, right, on her hit, right? Just the same way you do it with Risley. It's a weird terminology thing that I've never really talked about specifically in a video, so I figured I would do it just because I do think that we kind of are just, some people, also sub DPS, it's a very confusing term. Like, if you tell a new player, oh, this is a sub DPS character, you gotta explain what a sub DPS is. It's not like, because what your new players, if you say main DPS, you stay on field with them and they do damage, and you go, oh, sub DPS, they're a secondary DPS, right? That is how it was literally explained to me at the beginning of the game, a secondary DPS. Nobody said anything about, oh, don't actually use them on field, right? So when I heard sub DPS, I was like, why are people like playing so many like, on field DPS teams, right? People would call Shangling a DPS or a sub DPS. I mean, DPS also. And they would be like, I would be like, but you're not staying on field. Like, it wouldn't be explained. Like, it's a term you have to explain, and it's not inherently like easy to sort of get immediately. Whereas if I say this character is a support character, this character is a main DPS, I feel like 99% of people are gonna get that unless they've literally never picked up like a team making game before, right? I feel like they kind of, because Genshin's not a turn-based game. You can only stand with one character, right? And Dokkan, right? If you're a support character, you can also be doing other stuff, in terms of like a, DPS sort of style, right? Because you have those, if you know what Dokkan is, right? You know what I'm talking about. So overall, this is how I would like to categorize characters, and this is how I think people should categorize characters, because to me, if Mavuika is doing off-field damage and is doing 1 million damage, it's no different from, oh, look at this character who's giving 500% attack or something. I don't know how much it would take for, 1 million damage extra on some characters. I mean, with Risley, it'd probably take 100% crit damage, and you'd probably be giving 1 million damage more, right? Maybe. I don't know. Because it would, like, 50% of Risley's damage, like my C3 Risley, give him 100% crit damage, and then you're kind of supporting with like 1 million damage, right? So this term overall, I feel like I don't like using it, and I don't think I'm going to use it, because Albedo, he's not a sub DPS. We're not using him necessarily for his damage most of the time, right? Especially too, like, I really don't think Albedo is a sub DPS anymore because of that. I don't even think he qualifies for like the people who do say sub DPS, right? Because I mean, if we're not going to put Nahida in there, then we certainly can't put Albedo in there, right? But people do still. That is sort of the double-edged sword of like talking about Nahida as like, oh, she's only a support, she's not a sub DPS, because they're literally, I've heard support, not a sub DPS, even though she does off-field damage, which that is some level of, sub DPS. And then, you know, sort of the same people would then go, well, Albedo's a sub DPS. I get that Nahida is a more of a support, but we're talking about them just completely ignoring the fact that she does off-field damage. I'd rather just say support. It's simple as that. It makes it way easier for people to understand. I'm gonna need you to match his style in the comments section below. Put the emoji. If you don't, I will take your family. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. And we may get emojis for members soon. I'm planning on possibly 6 emojis. We'll see if it works out. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Bye.